Thanks for tuning in today on this week's episode of Watch Girls A to Z. I'm Zoe.
I'm Elena. Welcome today. We have a very special guest. Today we have a local collector, Ari Cantor. He's here to talk watches with us. Tell us what he likes about watches, what he dislikes about watches, what he wears, how he got into collecting. It's going to be a very exciting show.
We peeked into the minds of people on the streets on last episode that didn't really know watches, so we wanted to bring along someone that we thought has
deep in the watch game.
Is deep in the streets. Deep in the watch game streets.
Deep in
obviously,
the streets.
I mean, deep into hip hop,
So
deep
welcome.
into manufacturing. Thank you both for having me. I deeply appreciate you inviting me on your show.
Good.
I mean, I'm not a girl, but I'm very honored to be with the two leading women in the watch industry. So thank you very much for allowing me to be your guest this week.
Welcome. Thank you for coming here. We're excited to kind of peek into the mind of a well-seasoned collector.
It's a twisted mind, so I'm
like
going to give you that warning now, but it'll be a fun ride. And hopefully I can add some input. Obviously, I don't have your area of expertise, but look forward to contributing. Thanks.
Good. We're excited.
Fantastic. So as we usually start our show, let's talk about what we're wearing today. Ari, what do you have on your wrist?
Oh, so today I brought a very unique piece. Today I brought the bar mitzvah watch.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
So this piece, which I'm going to take off my wrist, problem is, so this face right here, this was designed specifically by the gods, but this body's been engineered for podcasts, not YouTube. So, all right, let me pull this up here. So this is a Seiko quartz. It's actually gold-plated. And this was actually given to me on my 13th birthday for my bar mitzvah. And this was the first probably decent watch I ever got. Before that, I was wearing a lot of flick flacks and a lot of the swatches. I had a couple Ironmans and all that. But what's cool is on the back, my mother was a sweetheart, and she actually engraved it. So it says, Ari, love mom and dad, and the date of my bar mitzvah. So this was actually recently repaired by Govberg, so I can't thank them enough. So 11/11/95 for all the heads out there. And obviously the serial number in case you want to knock off a vintage quartz Seiko watch, you know what I mean? Go at it. I'm down for that. So this is a cool watch. The reason why this is a cool watch was when my parents got me this, they weren't really sure what would be appropriate for a 13-year-old boy who already was demonstrating a lot of emotional issues. So they figured a tank watch would be cool.
Okay.
But at the same time, they didn't want to go like Cartier tank level because they didn't feel that was appropriate for a 13-year-old, which I'm in complete agreement with.
I am too.
And it's just very simple. So what's cool is it's small. It fit me then. I still have teeny tiny wrists today, but I wear it, and it's cool because I think of them. I think about my my bar mitzvah training.
It's a good tempo watch. Like it's gold plated, so if you wear it with a suit, it's gonna look good.
Exactly. And the one thing I have to say was really cool is Seiko actually did kind of a decent job if you look at the dial itself. And it has a lot of shimmer to it. So
is it mother of pearl?
It is.
Okay.
And what's really cool is when you see it in the light, and it kind of has a shimmer, it's hard to see in the studio, it really bounces and reflects light. So the reason why this watch is really neat is my family belongs to Beth Shalom in Elkins Park. And the synagogue was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. And all of,
building.
yeah, it's a really, really cool building. And so all the light fixtures inside were also designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. So the stained glass fixtures kind of bounce all these crazy colors and lights. So I'd sit there, and instead of listening to the rabbi's sermon, I'm playing with my watch, looking at the reflection in the light. And that was a lot of fun. So good memories with this, going to bar mitzvah parties with this, thinking I was stunting on them and killing with my little watch. So
How often do you wear it now?
I wear this probably 2-3 times a week.
Really?
Like I actually wear this a lot. Like I wear this a lot, and I wear everything from beater G-Shocks to my Patek to a few other pieces. So.
And we'll get into that later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
You gotta love a watch that has a story. My watch doesn't really have a story, just a piece I've always loved. I'm wearing a Journe today. Reserve de Marche. I think it's a stunning watch. I've always loved the way that the rose gold and the black dial looks. Something I really adore about this watch is the dial configuration. I'm generally somebody that really likes symmetrical dials, and obviously this is not symmetric in any which way. But what I find so fascinating about it is actually the negative space in there and not the positive space. So, you know, your eye immediately goes to the subdials because they're silver. But if you look at the shape of the black and the negative space, it's just really fascinating to me. And I think it's a beautiful balance that somebody like Journe understands and not all watchmakers do. So 40 millimeter, power reserve indicator, really nice date, clear, easy, legible, and a piece I really enjoy. Zoe, what do you got on?
Well, this is a watch that we just got into our inventory. It will be on our site soon. It is a vintage Rolex GMT Master with a root beer bezel.
Yeah, buddy.
And a nipple dial is what they call it. Ari, do you know why they call it a nipple dial?
I don't. Could you
Really?
go ahead and tell me?
Wonderful. So if you look at the markers, they're tiny and round with a little bit of patina in the middle. And they kind of
Reminiscent of a nipple.
They resemble a nipple in a
Okay.
in a little bit. So
By that one, no, I'm the one with the straight face right now. But go ahead, keep going. Let's flow with this.
so
But by the way, it's a hot watch. That's cool.
almost every Rolex that you see, especially vintage, there are some sort of crazy nicknames, Batman, Hulk, everything. So this is a root beer, and it's also a nipple dial for the markers.
That's cool. Like, I mean, what's neat to me is to see the patina on the dial and how they age, because it seems like every root beer kind of ages differently.
You are
right?
speaking to my heart. Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, my favorite thing about vintage is that you can have two watches, one serial number apart. They were produced in the same year, same configuration of everything, but they've aged differently. So someone kept it in a safe and didn't see light, and it's kind of mint condition, perfect. And then you have someone who really wore the crap out of it, and it has a ton of different characteristics, and basically they're the same exact watch, but they've aged in such different ways. So the values of vintage watches is so dependent on the condition, and that's what is fascinating to me, where you have like a no date sub today that are, you know, you're gonna get from two different people, they're gonna look exactly the same.
Right.
So that's what I like about vintage, and that's part of it. The patina is a huge part of how watches age, and it's fascinating.
Zoe, what will a piece like that go for?
So it really ranges. It depends on the condition of the bracelet, on the bezel, if it's scratched. Again, if it's super mint, you'll see it for more than $15,000.
Wow.
And there's a big collector's market for them, but I think probably we'll list it around $12,000-13,000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Interesting.
Ari, do you think you'd ever wear a watch like that?
Are you a vintage guy?
Not really.
And do you consider that vintage? What do you consider vintage? Because
vintage to
everyone has
me-
different opinions.
Vintage to me is anything like pre-1970s.
Okay.
And to me, maybe that's because I'm a child of the 80s. I feel like pre-1970s, pre-quartz is kind of like classic vintage in my mind, where you still had a lot of traditional craftsmanship, and you didn't have, pardon me, like the CNC milling that went into making cases. A lot of stuff was made by hand. You had old guys sitting there with a Bridgeport milling away really slowly. I think that anything kind of from like quartz on, although maybe vintage is not like what I would consider like vintage mechanical, which I tend to be more swayed towards mechanical, even though I'm wearing a quartz watch on my wrist. I tend not to wear vintage because I don't feel that, me personally, I don't feel that I can like pull it off. I think there's certain men and women that can kind of do the old and new, or like the hipster look where you're wearing like a really cool NATO strap with a vintage sub, and it looks really cool, and you got on your cute little hat, and you got the dog to accessorize, whatever your spitz is. But no, I think like some people pull it off. For me, I tend to like more of like the more modern designs, and I like bigger cases. Although I kind of like more of a 36 to 38 millimeter case.
We'll get into that too.
And but I think Elena had a really good point as well. Is I like a lot of symmetry in watches too, like in watch styles and watch faces.
I'm with you though. I don't think everybody can pull off vintage. I'm somebody like you. I don't think I pull off vintage very well. I like more contemporary sizes. I like larger watches. I like a little bit sporty and more modern. So I definitely don't think everybody can pull it off. Zoe happens to be somebody that can pull it off really well.
Agreed.
Has some very cool vintage pieces in her collection. So last time we were on, we hit the street and we talked to a lot of inexperienced watch collectors about their thoughts on watches. So the feedback we got was like, great, you know, those people don't know about watches. So we thought it'd be cool to bring on somebody that does know a lot about watches, which is why we have Ari here today. He is a collector. As I said, he's local to Philadelphia. He's been with Govberg for quite a while, shopping, you said 2014?
Yeah, since 2014 was my first purchase.
Yeah, and has a pretty wide range in watches. So we thought it would be interesting to talk to him today about how he got into collecting, what's in his collection, what's going to be his next watch, maybe a little bit about rappers' watches, celebrity watches.
Obviously, we gotta do it.
Yeah.
Got to. Shout out to the fake watch buster.
Yeah. So Ari, tell us, how did you get into collecting?
So it's really interesting. I had always had an interest in watches, and I guess to give you a little background, so I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia in Elkins Park. Shout out to Cheltenham High School, what up, class 01, you know where you're at. And then I went off to Cornell and graduated in 05, and then I went to go work on Wall Street. And when I worked on Wall Street, I worked for a small firm called Goldman Sachs. And what was really interesting about Goldman was you generally saw most of the partners and senior executives, whether they're men or women, usually wore very cheap digital watches, right? So the idea was it's very hard to go and justify your fee to a client when you're wearing a $100,000, you know, perpetual calendar or something like that. So that was my phone. Anyway, so consequently, I tended to wear cheap digital watches because that was sort of the traditional culture, German, Austrian, Jewish immigrant culture of just being very low-key, assimilated. And obviously, you have clients that you're meeting with who are significantly more successful, very powerful men and women of all backgrounds.
And they would probably recognize the expensive watches.
Totally. I mean, people would walk in with just gigantic, amazing timepieces and it's just, you know, massive collections that you can't even imagine. So anyway, you walk around New York and you see a lot of people with a lot of cool stuff, and I would see those clients and I'd say, one day I will have that, or one day I'm going to get to that level. Long story short, I moved to Philadelphia and I joined the family business. We manufacture commercial restaurant products, specifically appliances, stainless steel tables, a lot of handcrafted goods, sinks. And I decided that when I became president of the company and I became a full partner with my father, that I wanted to sort of mark that occasion. And so at that point it was, all right, it's time to put away the Timexes, it's time to put away the Shinola, it's time to get something a little more serious. So my father and I decided to do something cool, and that's how we came to Govberg. My grandfather had a vintage 3445 that was a gold case, but it was a Frankenstein. It wasn't the original bracelet, it wasn't the original crystal. Case back was generic, and in essence, it was given to him by someone as a gift for, I think, his 60th birthday, to be exact. And so I decided, why don't we take an old Patek that really isn't a great Patek, and let's use that towards something.
Nice.
So I literally called up the phone in the Walnut Street location, and a guy named Alan Strassler picked up the phone. Shout out to Alan, the fan.
Alan.
Anyway, so Big Al picked up the phone and basically said, you know, here's what I'm thinking about doing. And that's where sort of the classic Govberg consultative selling began. So Alan said, okay, what are your goals? Is it just for you? Is it for you and your father? And my father at the time was wearing I guess you call it the Rolex with the snowflake or the white Explorer dial.
Okay,
I guess the snowflake's really the grand
Polar.
sake of the
Yeah,
Polar. Thank you.
Yeah,
The Polar. And my father decided he really wasn't wearing it a whole lot, so we decided, well, why don't we maybe trade that in too? So we came in, and Alan had picked out a couple pieces, and originally we were going to get matching 5196s.
Oh, nice.
And we
That's
thought that would
very
be really
nice.
cool, and there would be one that he would wear and one that I would wear.
Love that.
But then my father kind of looked at it and said, nah, I'm an alter cocker, which is like Yiddish for an old guy. And he's like, this isn't really appropriate for you. Like, you should get something younger and hip. And Alan said, don't worry, I have just the thing. So Alan goes and he pulls out a 5167 Aquanaut, with the stainless bracelet. And Alan's like, this is perfect. And Alan said to me, which I kind of agreed, why don't you have the younger one? If your father wants a sports watch, he's going to trade in the Polar anyway. Right. He can wear that. And then you'll have the 5196. And then what Alan did, which was really cool, was he then suggests, why don't we memorialize it, and I'll put the date on it, and I'll engrave your initials and your father's initials, and then you can kind of pass it down, and then you can use that 5167 towards something else later, or whatever it is. So we literally traded in those 2 watches, walked out of the store with 2 other ones, and it was an emotional day. It was a fun thing to do with my father, and then since there, I've started buying other pieces from Govberg as well.
All right, that's an awesome story.
Thank
and I love
you.
that. So I'm hoping you still have the Aquanaut and your father still has the Calatrava.
So we did and we don't. So we still have the 5196. It's the yellow gold, the J. And then I decided that if I achieved another personal goal, which I'll keep personal, it's a funny goal, but not appropriate, that what I would do is I was going to upgrade that. And I'd always wanted to have the travel time feature on the Aquanaut. So I actually traded in this year the 5167 for the 5164, which I brought with me today. And I actually got that a week before the Patek exhibition. And I wore that to the show. And that was really cool because I wore that watch for the second time, and it was also the day I got to meet Claude Penny, which is like the OG, the Patek god. So that was amazing to me as a dweeb.
So will you hold on to that watch, or you think you'll end up trading it in towards something else?
Yeah,
so,
what's your buying, selling, trading behavior?
So that's a really good point. So I think that there's sort of a wabi-sabi to collecting. Some people have, they just keep adding and they grow. I'm sort of the believer of if you acquire something, you should sort of let something go. Right, so I don't think it makes a lot of sense to have an extensive collection. Not, but that's just my taste. That's my opinion.
So, like, how many do you have in your collection currently?
Right now, decent watches, I'd probably say 7.
Ones that you wear. Okay, so you have
7,
7,
like,
and how many
pieces.
do you wear?
And I probably wear
on rotation
4 or 5
on
a regular basis.
So you're ready to trade some in?
I am. It's going to be an expensive end of the year. It's going to be an expensive Hanukkah for this little Jewish kid. I'll probably have, like right now, I have the 5164. I do a lot of traveling for work, a lot of international travel as well.
So you
suppliers.
actually use it.
So I use it, and it's an amazing feature, especially to have the home and kind of local or away time. But what I think I would like to do is maybe trade that in for a Nautilus. I realize it's like the hot watch right now. But an annual calendar. I'm not at the QP level yet, but an annual calendar would be great. So something like, 5267 and some of those cool pieces, maybe a white dial instead of the classic gray or silver would be cool. And even the Journe QP I'm eyeing as well. I'd love to get, but we'll see.
It's a great piece. All right, so why don't we get into what watches you brought for us today and
Sure. All right. So
why you chose them.
So I have this really expensive custom-made wash box that I use at home. So hopefully everyone get in it. So this is a limited edition. It's actually a collaboration between Govberg and La Colombe, which is a coffee roaster here in Philadelphia. Shout out to the gods over there.
And you made that happen.
I did make this happen. So I made this happen. So first piece we have out of the magic sack is. Oh, do you want to talk about the Journe or you want to talk about the 5164?
Why don't we go in
tell
order?
us.
Yeah, in
Okay.
order.
All right, so
talk
let's
about.
talk about the 5164. So let me pull this one out first. So this is my little magical, because this is, all right, let me tell you something as collectors. Stop with the watch rolls. Stop with the mahogany boxes.
Yeah, what are these? These are cool.
These are like the little pods. You can get these like on Amazon or eBay. Coming to Govberg soon for $29.99 plus a $3 fee to me. There you go. So basically just a little like velvet line thing. You can get these on Amazon for $10, whatever.
All right, there's some padding. It's a
There's
little
padding,
protected.
it's a little protected, it's a little zipper. The reason why I like this is for 2 reasons. One is you can roll these and shove these in shoes if you're a dude, because if you have big shoes, big feet, these easily slide in versus the watch roll, so it's easy for packing. I'm like a one-bag guy, so even if I travel overseas to the Middle East for 2 weeks, I do everything in a roll-on. Like I don't check stuff, so I can have other things with me. The other thing is, what's really nice is it doesn't really look like a traditional watch box.
So it's not conspicuous.
For security reasons, safety, everything else. So the first one today is the, not set to current time, the 5164. So this was the one I just acquired this year. And this is really great for 3 reasons. The first reason is, to me, this is sort of the sleeper. Unless you really know Patek and you really know about the brand or the product, it just seems like a nice watch, but it's certainly not a out of the mind. And that's because of, I think, that the tropical bracelet, which is really cool. The second thing is the fact that you can hide the local and the home time. So this is kind of like a fun party trick, because like you have it like this, and now it just looks like any other, hour, minute, second, watch, and it's nothing special, right? The other thing that makes this watch is if you've been traveling and you're tired and it's hard to tell time, this is idiot proof, right? Because you have the numerals. So it's very legible, it's very easy. So it's a really functional watch. And what's cool is I also have a NATO strap. So occasionally, like if I'm in the shop or something, or I'm traveling, I'll throw it on that. So it's, again, like it's simple. It's not.
You can still wear it to work.
You can still wear it to work.
It's a nice
it's not a big
piece.
deal.
Yeah.
How often do you wear it?
I will wear this really if I'm going to sometimes like a business meeting where I wear a suit, or I'll wear this pretty much on every business trip. This is what I take when I go on the road.
It's not your everyday watch. But
not my everyday watch. Yeah.
It's your travel watch.
This is the travel watch, which I guess makes sense. And there lies kind of the other thing, which is just the amazing finishing, which Patek does, which is just, it's out of this world. I mean, if you look at this with a loop, I even
You
still have.
still got your sticker
I
on.
keep it on. I keep it fresh. If you talk to Alan Strassler, my stuff is in mint condition 10 years from now. But like, you just look at the finishing, and it's like mesmerizing. I mean, I could look at that all day the way a collector could look at an oil painting or something, right? I mean, it's just cool.
So what made you, I know it has the whole travel aspect, besides that, what drew you to that particular piece, and do you ever foresee yourself trading that in for the next?
I do. So I'm probably going to trade this in for a Nautilus annual calendar.
Oh, right.
And I think that'll be my next thing, and kind of go back to the stainless bracelet. And I think what drew me to that is I don't know how to put it. It's almost not Patek, but yet it's very Patek. There's a part of it where you go, Patek in my mind is the Calatrava. It's the really classic minute repeaters.
Traditional.
It's very conservative, like ultra conservative, navy suit, navy tie, white shirt kind of conservative. And in my mind, this is cool because this was sort of an updated attempt at the sports line, whether it was the Nautilus or the previous generation of Aquanaut, which I think is kind of cool. And there's something like fun as well. I think it appeals to maybe buyers at any level. Like, I think you can see a young man or woman wearing it, and I could see an 80-year-old woman who just thought this was a cool thing, and she slaps on. I saw at the event that Govberg held with Patek, an older woman who flew in from, I think, St. Louis with her husband, and she was actually the collector, right? So she had a 24, but she was actually wearing a 5167 with the stainless bracelet. That's kind of cool, right? She's wearing an oversized watch, and I think that's great. So, see more women wearing cool watches like that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things you've said that are really interesting. I think your whole story of how you got into collecting is fascinating, especially given the episode we did last time where we talked to average people, and almost everybody said the same exact thing, that they thought businessmen would be wearing these expensive watches. So the fact that you didn't have that experience, I think, is pretty interesting. Regarding this particular model, you're right on point. I think it is kind of like not what you would expect from Patek at all. It has some traditional elements of Patek, but it's definitely a sportier, younger type feel to it. I also think that, the fact that you're a collector based on functionality is interesting. And I know you also have a black and blue in your collection.
Yeah, I do.
And I imagine you probably picked that for kind of similar type reasons.
Same reason. So that was sort of to do sort of a black and blue or Batman GMT or whatever. Again, it's really functional, but it's simple, and it's certainly like a fun segue. So before I had that, it was kind of a cool thing to get into. So, and it's cool seeing, going back to the theme of the show, more women branching into and wearing men's sizes. Like, for example, I could completely see you wearing this, rock that,
yes,
go on a date, go have a fun time out, and it's totally appropriate. Like, I don't look at that, and if I saw a woman with it, I would think, hey, she's really cool. Like, she's hip to it, she gets it, she's down for it. Like, I for the watch game. I mean, but
are there watches you think are inappropriate for women to wear?
I think there are, and what I would say is, there are some watches that I just think don't look particularly good on women.
For example?
So like I think like a men's size Cartier Roadster just to me is like too big, it's too gaudy, it's not like classic.
Is it size related?
Probably
Usually.
size related. I think it becomes like there's so many embellishments, it just becomes a little ridiculous. I think another watch that would kind of qualify as like, I've seen some women wear like I guess the Jacques Cousteau, the IWC, and again, like I think there's cooler sports diver watches for women. Like, why would you wear that when there's other choices, like a
probably a
sub or
story
something?
behind it.
So
Yeah,
if you had a
absolutely,
choice-
absolutely.
If you had a choice of a sports watch for a woman, what would it be? If you walked into the bar and saw this girl wearing,
Ooh, that's a really
You
good
jump
cool
on
question.
And it doesn't have to be, like, if there's one watch that if you saw a woman wearing, that you would be impressed by or be like, I gotta wife her up.
You know who I'd wife up? If I walked in and I saw a woman wearing like the yellow gold, I think it's yellow gold, 5167, like the yellow gold Aquanaut. Like that's a boss watch. Like that is like you put that down, she's like very finally sipping, a champagne cocktail.
And you see that.
That's cool. Like
Yeah.
that's like you're sporty, but I have a watch that's worth more than most people's cars. Like that's pretty impressive. Or the other thing I would say is if I saw a woman wearing like a Journe men's piece. I think that would be really cool because you got to geek out on watches. So like
There's
if
a
I
lady
saw
right
Lena,
here.
I would see guys who be like, "What's up, girl? So tell me a story behind that. Where'd you get that? What do you do for a living?"
yeah,
What
I
kind
would
of
stop
chronometer
somebody
do
to
you
borrow
do?
if they were wearing that
Like,
too.
Oh, yeah.
Your
So
end game would be to
what would
borrow the
happen
watch.
is like the end goal would be to borrow it, and then there'd be like $20 left on the nightstand and a note, and that would be it. Like here's cat
the
fare.
Journe. Thanks
took
for the
the
Journe.
Great night, holla, and that would be the end of it. So we'll see what happens. So the other piece. Oh, by the way, going back to this real quick. The other reason why this is really cool is I had the option to roast Claude Penny at the Patek event. So
Was it welcomed? Or?
it was a welcome. So at the event, Claude Penny and the whole Patek, entourage, the mafia, was there. And ironically, I actually worked on indirectly part of the galley for the new PJ, or private jet as we call it, in the shtetl, in the hood. And so I was talking to him about some of the equipment and the design of it, because obviously as CEO, he gets to fly the friendly skies on the Patek corporate jet, which is the coolest thing. I don't know, they have a photo of it somewhere, but it actually has a Calatrava cross.
Have you been in
on
it?
it? I have not been on it, but I saw the blueprints and I
Waiting
saw
for
a
the
lot of the work.
invitation?
I'm waiting for the invite any day. Yo, Claude, I'm here. You know what I'm saying? Holla at your boy.
Philadelphia.
Philly, all day. West Philadelphia, born and raised. So long story short, there was a station where they showed the enamel artisans working.
That was so cool.
And that was amazing
Yeah.
to see the level of detail and little microscopes. And it's like, all this person does is paint enamel. He never scratches his eye. He doesn't even drink coffee. He just paints enamel. That's all that guy does all day. So he comes over and he introduces himself. And I'm very naive because I don't think it's really him. I'm thinking it's maybe someone that just
Sitting
looks
in.
like
Yeah,
him.
they're just sitting in.
And I
for
was
him.
also with one of the Govberg staff, Caroline was with me. So I figure Caroline was just goofing on me and like paid someone to go over and say that they were him and like put on a little name tag. But then I realized he didn't have a name tag on and he had the Calatrava cross on his lapel and he had like a special one. So I'm going, oh, this might be the guy. This could be it. So we were talking and talking about how history of watchmaking and the artisanship that goes into it. And as someone that owns a company that manufactures products for a living, I really appreciate the level of detail. In my world, it's milling, it's weld work, it's panel bending, it's sheet metal fab. But we do a lot of similar kind of processes and finishes because we make products out of stainless. And we're talking, and he's wearing this beautiful $24.99. Like, the thing was unbelievable. I would sell my first and second born for this watch. Plus, it's his, so it's got the provenance, right?
Right.
So we're talking, and he says to me, what do you think of the event, and what about this and that? And I said, you guys are killing me. He says, what do you mean? He's very like French, the Swiss. And he had like his handler with him. He has like a number 2. I can't think of that guy's name. He's cool as hell. And he says, I said, there's one watch and one mechanism you have yet to invent, and whoever invents this is gonna like win the next space race for
But it was your
executives.
idea.
My idea.
Okay.
Right here, noting it on the show. And he said, what's that? I said, nobody's done a perpetual calendar chrono with a travel time. And he looks at me and he goes, huh. And there's a couple other guys in the corner, they're taking notes, writing it down. And he says, but no. He says, this is very difficult. I said, why? He says, well, you know, I said, have you traveled to a business meeting and tried to reset the time on one of your perpetual chronos? And he starts to giggle. I said, you need a stylus in 20 minutes to like set the time and get every saying. And I said, all the travel time feature is a clutch. That's it, right? You're just, when I push this button, you know, all I'm doing is just engaging a clutch as the watch goes around, right? This is just an additional hand and a clutch. And the only reason I know that's because I know a little bit about mechanical engineering. But
let me ask you a question though. Do you at all feel like that's a contradiction? Like you have this complicated calendar sitting there, and then you like pop in a
Clutch.
a different time zone, and then it's like, what happens when the month?
Right.
You're at the end of the month,
So-
and it's the wrong month, and you're somewhere else. Like, doesn't that kind of contradict itself?
It does and it doesn't, because I think where I'm going with that is you can engage it and you can have it set the time. You can do it kind of forwards and backwards. But that's sort of the world we live in. I think you're seeing people gravitate towards like the Apple Watch and other products because they have the abilities to have all these crazy complications and the Android products as well. And so the idea is that now if you're a traveling executive, man or woman, you could have this product and you could basically be able to have that time and what you need. And what's really cool is, so he looks at me and he says, well, what would you do first? And he says, sports or traditional? And I said, first you do the traditional.
Right.
You gotta.
I said, you gotta do that. And I said, get all the hedge fund guys like lined up. Give it like 2-3 years. When you actually start fulfilling the orders, then like come out with like a Nautilus case version. I was like, and go on sports, same movement. He says, why? He says, I don't know. And I said, you do it now. He says, what do you mean? I said, this watch is no different than the 5224, right? It's the same movement. It's just a different case, different dial. I mean, there's a few other things, but at the end of the day, there's nothing that makes it so different, right? So he's not going to take my advice. He's going to tell me I'm an idiot and I'm an American, but that's okay, and I respect that. But I got to shake his hand.
You had a good idea.
I had a horrible idea, but I got a photo with him, and that's pretty cool. I actually have the photo as a screensaver.
And you'll always remember that.
I'll totally remember it, and that's all thanks to Govberg.
So let's talk about the other watch you brought in, because it also is something special.
And then we want to ask you about some questions.
Sure.
Ask you some questions about some watches you don't own.
Yes, absolutely.
And what do you think
So
about it?
this is another story watch, also thanks to Govberg. So this is an FP Journe.
Got the original wrap on there.
It's got the original
Yeah,
wrap.
that's-
I like
When I
that.
travel with it, I put the original wrap on to
So
protect
you
the
bought
case.
that newer pre-owned.
This is new, and this was actually made to order.
Okay.
So this is the last, supposedly, 38 millimeter rose gold Chronometre Souverain. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Souverain. I don't know, I took Spanish. De lo mío personal, tú sabes. So this is really cool. So I'll get to the back of this in a minute, and I'll show you the fun part, and that's the story behind it. So where does this come from? All right. So I had the Patek, I had a Rolex, I had a couple other cool pieces, and I'm trying to think of what's next. And so Alan and George turned me on to Journe. And they're like, you're a loudmouth, you're a pain in the butt, so you need to learn about this brand. And I'm like, who's Journe? He's like, oh, this is like the bad boy of watchmaking. This guy's crazy. If you think you're insane, this guy's 1,000 times crazier. And I went, all right. So Alan and George get me into it. And I think George, or maybe it was Alan, sent me, I guess, the book about Journe. And I start reading through it at night and getting really into it. And I started learning more and more about how everything is completely vertically integrated. And in my business, Insinger, same thing. We literally bring in raw sheet metal, we fab it, we bend it, we cut it. And there's really not a lot of watchmakers that are still doing this. A lot of them rely on the ETA or edit movements. They're sourcing other components. Here's a guy who's like, I'm going to do it all myself, and we can do it all ourselves. And he figured he would do it the hard way, but that's kind of the point. Like, if you're not going to do it the right way, why bother?
Yeah.
It's like using gold movements. Like if I'm going to charge this amount of money for a watch,
Right.
it better be worth it.
Right.
Not just like rhodium plated gold or something, right? That's just super cool. Govberg held an event with Pierre, who I believe is the head of North America, and Francois Paul actually came in for the event, and there was a great dinner. It was a lot of fun. It was
We're talking the Journe boot camp.
yeah, the Journe boot camp, and so a lot of the watch
you get the
want.
sneakers?
Yeah, if you actually
I did
move,
get the
you can
Air
take a look.
Journes, and I think I might sell those on eBay for like $200. I got a pair of fake Yeezys I'm gonna sell with the Air Journes, but I do have a pair of the Air Journes, and it was very cool. So we're at the event, and obviously FP doesn't speak great English. He speaks a little bit, enough to get around, but he's not fluent. I speak no French. So
Spanish.
exactly,
Yeah.
I speak Spanish,
Gotcha.
no French. So I grabbed Pierre, who's obviously fluent in I think a couple languages, and I said, "Can you translate?" And at that point of the night, FP was signing copies of that same book for the guests. It was really cool, and I think Kieran wrote the book for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I met Kieran. He was super cool.
That was
really
a great
nice guy.
event.
Kieran needs to get
Very
out of the
funny.
apartment a little bit more and stop writing books about watchmakers. But shout out to Kieran. Yo,
He was he actually came to our office the other day.
Oh, he
a few
did?
weeks ago, yeah. And I had the Journe book on my desk, and he walked by. I was like, "Oh, I was just reading."
yeah,
your book."
he actually like autographed my book for me. He's like, so he's the star, but let me like actually autograph it. And he wrote like a little. It was cool. Anyway, so long story short, so we're talking, and I said, Pierre, I need you to like translate. So first, FP says, who should I make the book out to for the inscription? I said, Le Petit Juif, which is in French, the little Jew. So immediately he starts dying laughing because I'm very short. In case you couldn't tell on camera, I'm all 5'7". So he has a good time. And FP is a very tall guy. He's like 6'2" or 6'1".
He is a
Very
big
tall,
guy.
very handsome guy, perfectly tailored, manicured suit. So he starts writing it in, and he says, what do you do? And so now we start translating through Pierre. So I explained how I own a company that manufactures cooking equipment and restaurant equipment, and we start talking about the lack of craftsmanship in the world and teaching people the trades and how it's really important to do that. And I said, I'm the last independent guy. So I said to Pierre to translate, I said, explain to him that nobody understands you the way I understand you because I have 12 major competitors, and I'm the only guy that's left that's still independent. They're all owned by big conglomerates. So it's like me versus the world. And FP hears that, and he like lights up. So he writes in the book in very inappropriate French, but filtered was basically, bankers are jerks, so are lawyers, keep doing what you're doing, call me if
cool.
you're ever in town.
That's really
Which was like
cool.
the coolest, nicest thing ever. So we start chit-chatting, and so he says, what piece do you own? I said, I don't own any of your pieces. He says, why are you here? Like, how did you get, who do you know that you got in here and you met me? And I said, well, I'm really interested in the Chrono Blue. The problem is you make like 3 dials a year.
Right.
Because you're insane. And the other 8 million you make, you throw in the garbage because they're not up to your standards. But I said, I really want to buy a CS, but the problem is you only make them 40 mil. You discontinue to 38 mil. And he goes, well, modern taste. I was like, your collectors are jerks. Like, no, do what you do. This watch was originally, I think, a 36, and then there was a 38 millimeter. And I said, bring back the 38. And he says, I'm not going to do that as much as I like you. But he said, do you want to order one? I said, well, I was like, I don't really qualify. What do you mean? He says, look, here's the deal. We keep a couple cases extra in case we have a collector that wants to buy the product. He says, we keep them in a vault. I'm sure the vault is like a cupboard somewhere. And he's like, and we'll actually make one up in that, we'll case it up. We'll make you one. I'm sure we have the components for service, and we'll make you one, and I'll do something special just for you. And I was like, all right, He's like, no, I'm serious. Like, do it. Okay, cool. He says, talk to Pierre, call my office in a week, we'll get it done. Wow. So, okay. So we go on and on. I send Pierre an email the next day, like, dude, am I getting the watch? Like, what's going on? Pierre's like, please, wait. He's very, like, French and arrogant, which is hilarious. So then, like, a week and a half later goes by, and Alan goes, they're going to make you the watch. Well, what? He says, yeah, we just got off the phone, Pierre. Journe loves you. He thinks you're hilarious, even though he's probably already forgotten you. Well, they're going to make the watch for you. And so we're good. Just give us a deposit. It's like, done. Wrote the check, sent it off. So then they tell me, like, 6 to 8 weeks. So, like, I have, like, every calendar day, like, Mark checking in, right? 6 weeks, nothing. 8 weeks, nothing. 6 months go by, nothing. Like 8 months go by. Finally, 9 months, middle of the summer, I get a call from Alan. He says, "It's here." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he texts me a picture of the watch. And he says, "It has arrived in a FedEx box." I was like, all right, cool. So I go down, Alan pulls it out, writing the check as fast as humanly possible, pay for the watch. And I get an email from Pierre the same day, and he says, "We did something a little special for you." And I said, "What's that?" So on the back of the watch, if you look very carefully, Pierre and FP thought it was hilarious that my initials are ABC. So on the bridge,
Oh, wow.
there's ABC engraved. So I have
Amazing.
the only, to the best of my knowledge, FP Journe watch, or at least a CS, that has initials engraved by the factory, at the factory, before final finishing. So I have my initials to personalize it, and this to me is the greatest thing since sliced
Wow,
bread.
that's really amazing.
So that was cool. So I will never forget that. And again, had Govberg not invited me and brought me to this event and given me the opportunity, this never, ever, ever would have happened. So this to me is priceless. I'll probably, hopefully one day if I have kids, I can give it to them to enjoy. My guess is they'll sell it to pay for my burial. But, you know what I mean? At least we had that moment in the sun. And so my goal is maybe one day to see the actual facility. I'd love to do what Josh and Tim and I think a few other people have done and actually head over there one day. So thanks again, FP and Pierre, if you're watching. I love you to pieces. Thank you forever for giving me the coolest piece in the whole world.
And I can guarantee you, just knowing the sales floor and the way that we work, when that watch came in, everyone was probably gathered around him like, "Oh my God, it's crazy," like going nuts for it.
Yeah.
So that's very cool.
So that's really, I want to make two really important points, I think, from being on the show. That's really where you understand that the watch industry, as big as it is super small, and it's 100% relationship driven.
Yep.
A lot of other industries like that. The other thing is that's really the value of working with an authorized dealer, right? I could have found some dude on 47th Street in New York who would have like sent it to someone, they would have engraved it, thrown the case back on it, and done the exhibition. But that's different. Like it doesn't have the provenance of me meeting someone, having it done by the factory, the experience, like having that on the papers. So that's a really cool thing, and I think that's why it's important for a lot of collectors. You know, that's why you work with an AD, like 100%, and then you know that should anything arise, there's issues, you're covered, and that's really the value of like a Govberg, and why I continue to buy from Govberg and work with you.
And from our perspective, you know, being in sales and doing what we do, you are the reason we do it. To hear stories and to hear the path of people, to watch people start their collections, you know, a Seiko or whatnot, and build it into Journe and Patek. It's a pretty incredible thing. And it's the stories behind these watches that keep us interested every day, at least myself. And thank you so much for coming on. You were fantastic. And I didn't even know the story about the Journe, but it's incredible.
Now you know. And you were there that night.
I was there that night.
You were there that night and you had no idea. So I guess, like I would say 3 other kind of simple things. The first is, I think when it comes to collecting, you don't have to start with a Journe, right? Like you can start with something that's completely reasonable in your price range and just be you. I think you see too many people that want to buy a certain watch to portray an image or a style.
Like right off the gate.
Right off the gate, right? The second thing is don't discount the value of pre-owned, because I think it's a great way for people to try things. And once you've had a really high-end watch and you feel like the weight of something, you're like, yeah, okay, this is why I bought it. But just because somebody else didn't want it doesn't mean it's not perfect for you. So that's a great way to get into it. And the last thing I would say is engage in the consultative selling process, right? You know, talk to sales representatives, find someone that you're comfortable with, whether it's by phone, email, text message, because one of the great things about a company like Govberg or any other authorized dealer is their ability to kind of guide you down the path of where you should go and where you shouldn't go, right? There's plenty of times where I wanted something and Alan was like, dude, don't do this, right? Or Alan will say, you know what, like I got this in, this I think would be perfect for you, here's why. I'm like, oh yeah, you know, it's a good point. And I'll consider things that I wouldn't normally. So as much as collectors and aficionados think they know everything, you don't know everything. And that's why you work with like these 2 women who do know a hell of a lot. So that's why.
Awesome. Well, Ari, thank you so much for being on with us tonight. We hope everybody enjoyed our show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we hope to have you
Appreciate it.
again, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.